It's that time of the year again, where families get together, spend quality time, put on their cardigans, bust out the pea coats, enjoy a little gloomy weather with colors of bronze and copper left over on the trees before becoming completely bare, and who can forget the big feast of enjoying turkey with its sides, accompanied by your loved ones and the delicious aftermath like coffee and pie. Man, just thinking about it feels so warm and cozy, and not to mention, if there's one movie that perfectly describes family tradition on Thanksgiving, I would have to say nothing compares to this. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was released in 1987, and once again, it's another John Hughes classic. The basic premise of the film is that a marketing executive named Neal Page, played by Steve Martin, is out on a business trip in New York just 2 days before Thanksgiving. In an attempt of wanting to leave early to make it back to Chicago just in time before the holidays begin, a lot is riding on him returning back home, like his daughter's school recital and more. Of course, when you're in the big city, a lot can happen, especially during rush hour, and the movie wastes no time giving us some classic John Hughes comedy full of mishaps and chaos, as Neal desperately makes his way to the airport. Upon arrival, his flight winds up getting delayed, and this is where fate steps in, as Neal befriends, and I use that term loosely, a shower curtain salesman, Griffith, played by the one and only John Candy. Now, I won't spoil how timing plays a huge factor in all of this, but it was destiny for them two to meet. And so with that, Neal is already annoyed by Del's character, finding him obnoxious, talkative, and somewhat a jinx. Although they do board the plane sometime later, they eventually make an emergency landing in Wichita, Kansas due to heavy snowstorms, which makes it completely impossible to return home, at least on time, thus causing immediate panic to his wife Susan, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And just when Neal thinks there's no way he'll get out of this situation, Del happens to reappear into his life, assuring that if he sticks by him for the night, he can help Neal get a room at a motel instead of sleeping at the airport, and this is where the story officially begins. What ends up being an innocent gesture becomes a memorable adventure between Neal and Del, as anything after this point, nothing goes according to plan, which further delays all of Neal's hopes of making it home. Like the title says, and thanks to all the connections Del has throughout the states, they literally take every option they can find, like planes, trains, and automobiles. And honestly, there's so much that happens that it's better that you watch it for yourself to see how each circumstance snowballs into a journey leading into one disaster after the next. Of course, as the travels continue, Neal gets fed up with all of Del's habits and loses his patience as he explodes in anger, sharing his thoughts on what he thinks of him, making this part of the movie completely heartbreaking. Del counterattacks Neal's brutal words with one of the most memorable lines in movie history about being true to himself and tolerating life's ups and downs, especially involving his personality. Despite feeling guilty, Neal continues to stick by Del even though his suffering gets the best of him numerous times, as not even parting ways can help him escape this nightmare, cause fate has a way to bring them both back together. One of my all-time favorite scenes has to be the car rental scene at the airport. Frustrated with everything that happened so far, Neal drops about 18 F-bombs, making it a record of pure laughter and savagery, thus causing this PG rating to be PG-13. So as the movie goes on, both Neal and Del learn more things about each other, and throughout all the exhaustion, they finally make it to Chicago's train station the day of Thanksgiving. And here, they both finally part ways once and for all. And I love this moment because you see Del is trying to not let Neal go, having some sort of an attachment, and on the other end, you get so invested in this film that you also feel burnt out with Neal, feeling some sort of comfort that you too also made it home. Now, this is where the movie takes a huge plot twist because Neal ends up reminiscing on the train of all the events that happened within these past 2 days, and despite laughing about it now, seeing how ridiculous the whole trip has been, Neal recalls a conversation about Del talking about his wife and certain key phrases as he puts them all together to make a shocking discovery. When returning back to the station to see a lonely Del sitting there by himself, Neal discovers Del's wife Marie had passed away 8 years ago and has nowhere to go. Understanding that Del just travels to avoid the pain and just wanted to have some company and someone to talk to, with a heartfelt moment of knowing it is Thanksgiving after all, Neal invites Del to his home and introduces him to his entire family, especially his wife Susan, who's now relieved, because this whole time she assumed Neal was cheating on her, but that was never implied due to the script changing and edits making it look like she just missed her husband. This explains why she had tears in her eyes when he came through the front door with Del, whom she was aware about but thought it was all lies. Because honestly, if you watched it the way it is without knowing the true intentions of the story, some scenes do feel rushed or out of place. Otherwise, you'd be like me and say, "Calm down lady, it's only been 2 days." But anyways, with nostalgic music in the background, classic 80s atmosphere, a wintry Chicago suburb, warm hugs and food, the movie concludes with Del feeling he has a place of belonging, and most importantly, a new friend. Now, for those who just watched this movie will enjoy it for what it is and will admire both actors' portrayal of each character. However, if you were to read the unreleased scripts of the movie that had John Hughes' true intentions of the film, you'd be pretty surprised. Because, like Neal's wife's assumption, the movie also had another plot twist indicating that most of the mishaps that played in the movie were also intentional by Del, who purposely sabotaged the journey so Neal wouldn't make it home, or at least prolonged it to spend more time with him. That kinda has a weird vibe to the film's innocent charm and definitely would have been a darker approach to the storyline, so I'm glad edits were made as hours of footage was cut to make it flow more smoothly. But nonetheless, I love this movie and it's a film my family and I watch it on every Thanksgiving. It's a beautiful reminder to not judge someone so easily as you don't really know what their story is and what they've been through. Sometimes you'll find out the hard way, but that's what makes us human, and I absolutely love it. This movie perfectly reminds me of my holiday trips to Ohio, being on the open road, snow on the ground, cold nights, and arriving to a warm home just in time for Thanksgiving dinner, being surrounded by family, and of course, delicious food. Let me know in the comments below what you think of planes, trains, and automobiles, and have a happy Thanksgiving.